Welcome back to GeoDudes, your go-to channel for geography-related content. In this video, we're focusing on Europe, a continent filled with dozens of countries all nestled closely together. This proximity of countries and capital cities makes Europe a great place to spend time exploring. Europe also has a vast transportation network spanning the continent, with almost every country being connected via planes, trains, or automobiles. However, here at GeoDudes, we are very partial to the airplane. So we had an idea. What if we wanted to fly to every European capital as fast as possible? How quickly can we even do this? Buckle up, because today, the GeoDudes are becoming the graph theory dudes.
Before we lay out our methodology, we would really appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribe to the channel as we grow our community of fellow Geo guys and gals. Now back to our process. The goal is to visit every European capital city using only direct flights and driving when a country's capital does not have an airport. Europe is not a clearly defined continent like Africa, for example, as there are some countries like Russia with territory in Europe and Asia. So first we had to define a list of European countries. The final list includes all the countries generally considered to be European, including Russia and a few other transcontinental countries like Turkey, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. People debate whether these are European or not, but we included them because without them, we would not have been able to visit every airport on our list without repeats. For example, Minsk, Belarus is not connected with any of the European capitals outside of this group due to political reasons, but including Russia, Turkey, and the Caucasus countries allowed it to be reconnected via one or more layovers. Next, we determined the primary airport with scheduled commercial service in each of these cities. With this, there are a few important things to note. For one, some large capital cities like London and Paris have multiple airports that serve the city. Paris has Charles de Gaulle and Orly, and London has 5 airports with Heathrow, Gatwick, London City, Luton, and Southend. In these cases, we chose the largest of the group, so Charles de Gaulle in Paris and Heathrow in London. Second, some capital cities don't have an airport at all, particularly the capital cities of the European microstates. In these cases, the primary airport used is the closest major airport in the neighboring country. For example, to go to Monaco, you would fly to Nice. To go to Liechtenstein, you would fly to Zurich. The exception of this trend is Kiev, Ukraine, which has an international airport, but it is currently closed due to the ongoing war. Rzeszów Airport in Poland is used instead. With that said, we are not interested in the time to fly to the nearest airport, but rather the time to get to the capital city itself. In cases where there is no airport in the capital, we account for the time it would take to drive from the nearest airport to the capital city, then back to the airport. Lastly, we made travel times between two cities symmetric for simplicity. This means that flying from London to Berlin takes the same amount of time as flying from Berlin to London, for example.
We also made the following assumptions to simplify the process. It is unrealistic to assume that you can hop off a flight and catch another one instantaneously, so we wanted to force some sort of layover time. However, some of these flights only operate once or twice a week, and we do not want this to affect the answer. This is a theoretical exercise of curiosity that is intended for fun, and not an exact science. If we ignore the actual schedule, but we do use the flight times from flights that do exist, we can solve this problem reasonably efficiently. Rather than using the exact schedules to calculate the exact layover times, we will enforce a 2-hour layover for every flight. Additionally, we will allow an 18-hour window during the day in which flights can depart. This constraint is meant to capture the idea of flights start departing at 6 in the morning and go until midnight. If we have been flying or waiting for layovers for 18 hours straight, we will enforce a 6-hour rest period until flights can depart again. These assumptions capture the essence of having to use actual flight schedules at the airport while keeping this problem fun and being able to be solved relatively quickly. Now that we have laid out the ground rules and assumptions for this project, we have to go about solving the problem and finding the fastest route to visit all of the capital cities. This seems like a daunting task. How exactly can we do this? Well, we'll have to take a brief interlude from geography into the world of mathematics. I promise, this is interesting. A famous problem in mathematics is the traveling salesman problem, which finds the fastest way a salesman can visit all of the locations he needs to sell to and return to his original location. Think, for example, of the post office. A mailman needs to start at the post office and collect the mail for his route. He then needs to visit every house on his route and deliver their mail. Lastly, he needs to return to the post office to take the car back. This problem is very simple to understand, but it is actually quite difficult to solve. The simplest method to solve this would be the brute force approach, where you simply look at every single possible route that the salesman can take and find the route that had the fastest time among them. For a small number of cities, this is a reasonable thing to do, but it scales combinatorially and becomes impossible pretty quickly. For n cities, there are n-1 factorial divided by 2 possible routes. For small values of n, this is not an issue for a modern computer. However, it becomes a big problem very fast. For example, with n equals 6 cities, there are 60 routes to parse. But doubling the number of cities to n equals 12 results in nearly 20 million solutions to analyze. In this problem, we have 49 cities on our list, so we have to find the shortest route out of 6.21 times 10 to the 60th possible routes. This seems impossible. Well, it actually is impossible. A computer cannot do this before the universe ends. There are simply just too many individual routes that the computer would have to parse to solve this. However, as humans always seem to do, smart people have figured out a clever workaround to this problem. In 1960, mathematicians Claire Miller, Albert Tucker, and Richard Zemlin applied a branch of math called constrained optimization, which focuses on finding the best solution to a problem given a set of constraints to solve this problem much more efficiently in practice than the brute force approach ever could. We are not solving the traveling salesman problem exactly because we do not require the traveler to return to their start point. However, we can manipulate aspects of the formulation, in particular the constraints of the optimization problem, to fit our criteria, so we can solve our problem efficiently. In fact, even if we wanted to treat this as a traveling salesman problem, there actually is no loop that exists due to a capital with a fascinating lack of connections. But we will discuss that later. Because of this mystery airport is forced to be either the very first or very last airport visited on our journey. Now, we are done with the math, and we can return to the geography. Let's go through the results and point out some interesting bits of information we collected along the way. Our first interesting observation comes with our very first airport, in Bern, Switzerland. Switzerland is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and with that should come lots of airline connections for business and tourism. This role is filled by larger airports in the country, like Zurich and Geneva, but we still expect Bern to carry more weight than it actually does. Of the 48 other cities in our list, it flies to just one singular destination, Larnaca Airport, which is the closest airport to Nicosia, Cyprus. Upon further review, the flights out of Bern are bizarre, including multiple locations on the Italian island of Sardinia, various small Greek islands, and Monastir and Jerba in Tunisia. None of London, Paris, Berlin, or other large European capitals are reachable directly from Bern. We mentioned earlier that a loop was not possible because of a shocking lack of connections. Here is the big reveal. Now let's begin flying on the shortest path to visit every European capital.
The flight from Rimini, our San Marino airport, to Luxembourg is a beautiful microstate connection. Some things just make sense.
Now we are entering the Russia-Belarus bloc. We all know of the political connections between Russia and both Serbia and Belarus, and we know how other European nations feel about Russia and Belarus in particular. It is interesting that you can reach Moscow from both Minsk and Belgrade, but there is no direct flight between Minsk and Belgrade. In fact, this would have broken the loop and deemed our route infeasible without backtracking to an already visited airport. Thus, we needed to include the Caucasus nations and Turkey.
There is a lot of history between the nations of Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, so it may come as a surprise that there is a direct flight that connects the two capitals of Belgrade and Sarajevo. However, they have put their differences aside and are allowing us to use their connection on our route. Many thanks.
Moldova is a former Soviet country whose former communism is unmistakable via its brutalist Soviet architecture. Per Worldometer, it ranks second to last in GDP per capita in Europe for 2026, only above war-torn Ukraine. These facts made us very surprised that its capital, Chisinau, is quite well connected. On average, the airports in our list had 22.77 other connections. Chisinau has 25 connections, placing it above average and punching well above its weight in terms of GDP per capita. It turns out Chisinau's airport is actually the 13th busiest airport in all of the formerly Soviet territories. If your fun facts about Moldova were running dry and you needed a new one, look no further.
Rome is the capital of Italy, but its airport is also the closest one to the Vatican, which is located within the city of Rome. Therefore, we require the drive to the Vatican for it to count. Similarly, the previous two stops are Nice and Zurich, the airports closest to the microstates of Monaco and Liechtenstein. That means we have 3 microstate drives in a row, and one more coming up shortly. This is truly the microstate blitz.
This is one of the most beautiful pairings on this journey. Malta is famous for its beaches and Mediterranean climate, where Andorra is known for its ski resorts. This is one of those opposites attract, fire and ice, yin and yang pairings that really just makes a lot of sense and shows the beauty of tourism to be able to experience the opposite kind of climate.
The Nordic states directly to the Baltic states was a satisfying reality. Sometimes simplicity is beauty. Our route tracks nicely from west to east across the Nordic capitals from Reykjavik, through Scandinavia, then on to Estonia for the Baltics. Or is Estonia Nordic? That's a debate for another time.
With the current war in Ukraine, there are no commercial flights that operate to or from its capital city of Kiev. The closest option was to fly into the Polish city of Rzeszów, located a 9-hour drive from Kiev. This is obviously a bottleneck to our goal of traveling as fast as possible. By our own rules about layovers and the 18-hour flying window, this actually takes an entire day of our journey. That is why it is optimal for it to be the very last stop, as once we land, we can make the drive there and not have to return to Poland or comply with future airline schedules. It is ironic that we begin in the famously neutral country of Switzerland and end in a war-torn country that has been dealing with devastation over the past few years. Hopefully, we could see peace in the region soon. Finally, we have completed the journey. Following our rules about layovers and driving when necessary, the journey was completed in a grand total of 269.42 hours. This is equivalent to 11.23 days of travel. We averaged 4 flights per day, with a maximum of 6 flights on one day and a minimum of 2. What a journey it was!
There was one flight that was not included on the shortest route, but its existence was a head-scratcher when we were compiling the data. It was so interesting, we couldn't help but to include another bonus flight. After all, it wouldn't be a GeoDudes video without one. That is the flight between Skopje, North Macedonia and Valletta, Malta. Like Moldova, North Macedonia is poor by European standards, ranking as the 5th lowest GDP per capita in the continent by Worldometer. Yet this flight exists for 2 primary reasons. It can take North Macedonians to a tropical island for a very low price, and there are actually many North Macedonians that live in Malta. The flight is operated by Wizz Air and is as low as $16 for a one-way trip, making it more affordable for the North Macedonians to travel. Malta is a tiny nation with a population under 600,000, but it sees nearly 12 million visitors per year. This tourism demand and small population necessitates foreign workers, and Malta's parliamentary record in 2018 estimated that there were nearly 10,000 Macedonians living and working in Malta. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it and learned a thing or two. We wanted to give a special shout out to the Geo parents for the new microphone. If you missed our first video about 5 of the most random flights in the world, you can check it out here. For more content like this, subscribe to the channel. We're considering doing a similar video where we visit the airport in the capital of each US state. Comment below if you're interested in seeing that video, and leave any comments about which route you thought was the coolest. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.